A civilization stretched across a landmass bigger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. It gave its people flush-style toilets, covered sewers, and citywide drainage 1,000 years before anyone in Europe thought to build one. And to this day, no one on Earth, no historian, no linguist, no computer, can read a single word they wrote. This is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, the river that gave them life, and the mystery of why, after 1,000 years, they simply vanished. It rose along the Indus River and its tributaries, across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, more than 4,000 years ago, fed by snowmelt from the Himalayas far to the north. By 2600 BC, while Egypt was raising its pyramids and Sumer was ruled by god-kings who carved their own names into every wall, this civilization was already old, and already enormous. At its height it covered over 1 million square kilometers, more than 1,000 known settlements, from the mountains of Afghanistan to the Arabian Sea, more territory than any other Bronze Age civilization on Earth. Yet for 3,500 years, it was completely forgotten. No name for it survived. No king's name. No epic poem. Not even a rumor. It was rediscovered almost by accident when 19th century railway workers laid track over ancient baked bricks without knowing what they were walking on, and used thousands of them as cheap track ballast. It was not until the 1920s that archaeologists dug beneath the mounds and understood what they had found, not scattered ruins, but an entire lost civilization, older than anyone had guessed. What emerged from the dust was staggering. These were not villages. They were planned cities, laid out on a grid, centuries before the word urban planning had existed anywhere else in the world. Mohenjo-daro, the mound of the dead men in later Sindhi, once held as many as 40,000 people inside walls of uniform baked brick, one of the largest cities anywhere on Earth at the time. Its streets ran straight, north to south, east to west, wide enough for carts, crossing at right angles like a checkerboard, block after block after block. Every single brick in the city, whether in a mansion or a workshop, was made to the exact same ratio, 4 units long, 2 wide, 1 thick, fired hard enough to survive 4,000 years. That ratio appears in cities 800 kilometers apart, built by people who likely never met, as if the entire civilization had silently agreed on a single standard and never broke from it. There is no evidence of a decree, no royal inscription ordering it, no capital handing down the law. And yet somehow, for hundreds of years, everyone followed it. The Indus Valley may also be the earliest place on Earth where people grew cotton and spun it into cloth, centuries before it reached Egypt or the shores of the Mediterranean. Beneath those streets ran something even stranger, a city-wide network of covered drains, carrying waste away from homes and out of the city, engineered with a fall precise enough to keep the water moving. Private houses had their own bathing platforms and latrines, connected by terracotta pipes to the drains running beneath the street, a level of household comfort almost no other Bronze Age city offered. A family in Mohenjo-daro could bathe indoors and watch the water carry itself away, underground, out of sight and out of smell, while their neighbors in most of the ancient world still carried water by hand. Rome would not build a comparable sewer system for another 2,000 years. Most of Europe would not have one until the 19th century AD. At the heart of Mohenjo-daro stood a structure unlike anything else found from this period, a vast sunken pool, waterproofed with layers of brick and bitumen, that archaeologists simply call the Great Bath. It measured 12 meters by 7, over 2 meters deep, fed by a well, drained by a channel large enough for a person to walk through upright. Steps descend into it from both ends. No one knows exactly what it was for. Ritual purification, most researchers believe, though no altar and no god's image was ever found beside it. Search Mohenjo-daro and Harappa for a palace, and you will not find one. Search for a temple with a god statue enthroned inside, and you will not find that either. Every other Bronze Age civilization we know left behind monuments to kings, pyramids, ziggurats, statues of pharaohs, tablets boasting of conquest and of the enemies they crushed. The Indus cities left almost none of that. No royal tomb stuffed with gold. No inscriptions naming a single ruler, a single general, a single dynasty. Both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were built in 2 distinct parts, a raised citadel holding larger public structures, and a sprawling lower town where most people actually lived, worked, and raised their families. The closest thing to a portrait of power is a small steatite bust barely 20 centimeters tall, found in Mohenjo-daro. Archaeologists nicknamed it the Priest King. We do not know if he was a priest, a king, or neither. Some archaeologists now argue this wasn't an oversight. They think the Indus cities may have been governed without kings at all, perhaps by councils of merchants, priests, and elders. It's a strange thought, a civilization that mastered engineering, trade, and city planning across a subcontinent, apparently without ever needing a god-emperor, a standing army, or a single-named dynasty to do it. Their obsession with precision shows up everywhere. Traders used small cubical stone weights, carved with mathematical exactness, in a strict binary system, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and on upward. The same weight system, accurate to fractions of a gram, has been found from sites 600 miles apart, made by hands that likely never touched the same workshop or spoke the same dialect. A bronze measuring rod found at Mohenjo-daro carries fine graduated marks spaced almost exactly 1 1/3 centimeters apart, a unit of length that turns up again and again in the buildings themselves. Along the docks and marketplaces, this was a civilization built on trade. Caravans and riverboats carried cotton, grain, pottery, and beads across the entire Indus network, season after season. In the city of Lothal, archaeologists uncovered what may be the world's oldest known dockyard, a brick basin connected to a river channel, built to handle the rise and fall of the tide. Indus merchants sailed west, and Mesopotamian tablets from Sumer speak of a distant trading partner they called a Maluha, rich in carnelian, ivory, precious wood, and strange animals no Sumerian had seen before. Indus carnelian beads, etched with a technique so precise it has been difficult to fully replicate even today, have turned up in royal graves as far away as Ur, in modern-day Iraq. Indus seals, small stone stamps carved with animals and symbols, have been found in Mesopotamian cities, proof of contact between civilizations separated by more than 1,000 miles of desert and open sea. The most common image on those seals is a strange, single-horned animal, resembling a bull seen in profile, that modern scholars simply call the unicorn. No one knows what it meant, or why it was everywhere. Above the animal, almost every seal carries a short line of symbols, the Indus script, pressed into wet clay to mark ownership, a shipment, or something we can no longer guess at. Over 400 distinct signs have been catalogued, carved on seals, pottery, and tiny copper tablets, used for at least 700 years across the entire civilization, from one end of it to the other. And in more than a century of trying, no one has ever translated it. Not a single confirmed sentence. There is no Rosetta Stone for the Indus script, no bilingual inscription, no king's boastful monument giving us a way in, the way Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mesopotamian cuneiform were eventually cracked. The average inscription is barely 5 symbols long, too short for the statistical methods that unlocked those other ancient scripts, where whole paragraphs gave scholars room to find patterns. Some linguists argue it encodes a real spoken language, perhaps an ancestor of the Dravidian languages still spoken by tens of millions of people in southern India today. Others argue it isn't a full writing system at all, just symbols for trade, clan marks, or religious tokens, more like a series of logos than a written sentence. In recent years, researchers have even turned to computers, running statistical and machine learning models on the symbols, hunting for grammar and pattern invisible to the human eye. So far, none has produced a translation other scholars accept. The debate has run for 100 years, and the truth is, right now, nobody actually knows what the Indus Valley people were trying to say. 800 kilometers to the south, the city of Dholavira solved a problem that still challenges engineers today: how to survive in a land with almost no rain for most of the year. Its people carved enormous stepped reservoirs directly into the bedrock, channeling seasonal floodwater into storage that could carry the entire city through a long dry season, sometimes more than one. At the city gate, archaeologists found a sign made of large gypsum letters, 10 Indus symbols, once inlaid into a wooden board above the entrance. It may be the world's oldest surviving signboard. We still cannot read it. At Kalibangan, further east, archaeologists found something smaller but just as astonishing: the furrow marks of a ploughed field, preserved in the earth for nearly 5,000 years, among the oldest ever discovered. Away from the grand engineering, the small finds are what bring the people back. A bronze figure, barely 11 centimeters tall, cast using the lost wax method, shows a young woman standing with one hand on her hip, bangles stacked up her arm. Archaeologists call her the dancing girl. She is nearly 4,500 years old, one of the earliest known bronze castings anywhere, and she still looks like she is waiting for someone. In the workshops, potters, bead makers, and metalworkers turned out goods on something close to an industrial scale: terracotta toys with wheels, seals by the thousand, and jewelry that traded across a continent. Children played with small clay carts and whistles shaped like birds, nearly identical to toys still sold in village markets in the same region today, 4,000 years later. Figurines of women, wide-hipped and heavily ornamented, have been found by the hundreds. Many researchers believe they served in household worship, though what exactly was worshipped is, again, unclear. One more oddity: for a civilization spanning 1 million square kilometers, remarkably few weapons have been found. No massed armories, no mass graves from battle, no city walls clearly built for siege defense. Some historians think the Indus cities may have gone centuries with little organized warfare between them, an extraordinary claim for the Bronze Age, and one still debated fiercely today. And then, beginning around 1900 BC, over the course of a few centuries, it all began to come apart. The great cities were not burned or sacked in any way the archaeology can show. There is no layer of ash, no clear invasion, no conquering armies' inscriptions boasting of a victory. For decades, one theory dominated, that invading Indo-Aryan peoples swept in from the north and destroyed the civilization by force. Most archaeologists today reject that story. The evidence for a violent conquest simply isn't there. In the early 2020s, DNA drawn from a burial at Rakhigarhi, now the largest known Indus site, showed no trace of a sudden new population sweeping in from outside. Another piece of evidence against the old invasion story. The real culprit, most researchers now believe, was water. The monsoon patterns that fed the Indus system weakened over centuries, and the seasonal rains the cities depended on became less and less reliable. Some of the rivers that once watered the eastern cities, likely including a channel later remembered in legend as the Sarasvati, dried up or shifted course entirely, stranding entire towns without a water supply. Mohenjo-daro's own river, the Indus, may have shifted its channel too, possibly nudged by tectonic activity deep beneath the plain, leaving the great city stranded above dry ground. Faced with failing water and failing harvests, the great cities did not fall in a single dramatic collapse. People simply left, gradually, over generations, for smaller towns and villages further east. The grid streets went quiet, the drains filled with silt, the great bath cracked and dried. By around 1300 BC, the urban world of the Indus, at its peak the largest on Earth, was gone. Its people did not vanish, though. Their descendants carried Indus genes, crafts, and probably some of their customs into the villages and later kingdoms of the Indian subcontinent, generation after generation. Some scholars see the Indus roots of ritual bathing that reappears, centuries later, in the sacred river ceremonies still practiced across South Asia today, an echo of the great bath that has never quite faded. What they left behind sat buried and unread for 3,500 years, a civilization the size of a subcontinent, erased so completely that even its real name is lost. We call it Indus only because of the river beside it. We have their bricks, exact to the millimeter. We have their weights, exact to the gram. We have their bath, their drains, their toys, their jewelry, their tools, their toys for their children. We even have their words, hundreds of them, carved in stone and copper. We simply cannot read a single sentence they left us, no matter how carefully we look. More than 1,000 Indus sites have now been identified, and archaeologists estimate only a fraction have been fully excavated. New signs, new seals, and possibly the clue that finally cracks the script may still be waiting underground. Until then, the Indus Valley remains one of history's strangest paradoxes, a civilization so advanced it gave its citizens indoor plumbing 4,000 years ago, and so silent that it never told us its own name. Somewhere beneath the wheat fields and river silt of Pakistan and northwest India, a script sits waiting to be understood. When it finally is, we may not just learn how the Indus Valley spoke. We may finally learn how it thought.